And what if, in losing everything you loved, you could find a new reason to live? William was a man who seemed to have the perfect life. With a promising career on the rise and a wife, Emma, whom he adored, his future looked bright. However, everything changed in a tragic instant. An accident, which was not his fault, ended up leading William to an unjust prison. He took the blame to protect Emma, but the consequences were devastating. During the 5 years he spent behind bars, he was forced to face the cruel reality of loneliness and disillusionment. William's life crumbled. The death of his mother, Emma's abandonment, and the feeling of a hopeless future became his constant companions. He became a broken man marked by the weight of the choices he made for love, which now left him in a state of despair. Society, with its indifference, seemed to have no place for an ex-convict, and William struggled to find a place where he could feel accepted again. One day, while wandering through a cold, dark night, something unexpected happened. He found an abandoned baby. This encounter not only challenged his worldview, but also forced him to confront deep questions about parenthood, compassion, and responsibility. The little human being in his arms awakened feelings in William that he believed he had lost forever. It was as if, in that moment, he had a new chance, not just to care for another life, but also to rediscover his own. Thus, William's journey transformed into a quest for redemption. By connecting with Rebecca, a doctor who also carried her own wounds, he began to rebuild his life. Together, they faced the ghosts of their pasts and sought a new purpose. William found a new home in the countryside where he became a guardian of the forest, learning to care for nature while also tending to the emotional scars that accompanied him. As William dedicated himself to helping others and healing his own wounds, he discovered that the strength of love and family could transform lives. What seemed to be the end of his story turned out to be just the beginning of a new narrative, filled with lessons on forgiveness and the resilience of the human spirit. The life he had lost could, in fact, be recovered through the love he now had to offer a baby and a new family that was forming around him. And so, William began to understand that sometimes true freedom comes from within, and happiness can be found even in the most challenging circumstances. William's life, now marked by the unexpected responsibility of caring for the baby he found, became a roller coaster of emotions. Looking at the small, innocent face sleeping in his arms, he felt a mix of love and fear. What did he know about being a father? He, who had lost everything, desperately wanted to do the right thing, but doubts haunted him. Gradually, William began to establish a routine. He woke up early, fed the baby, and tried to create a small schedule. But the nights were the hardest. The baby's cries reminded him of his own loneliness and the pain he carried. The weight of past memories often overwhelmed him, and insecurities emerged like shadows in his mind. He questioned whether he truly had the capacity to love and care for such a fragile life. Rebecca, the doctor who had crossed his path, became a comforting presence in his life. She had a calm and gentle way that drew people in, and William, more than anyone else, felt attracted to her kindness. However, he also felt a barrier between them, an invisible line that prevented him from opening up completely. He feared that if he allowed himself to love again, he might lose everything once more. One night, while looking at the stars, Rebecca asked about William's life before the accident. He hesitated, the words trapped in his throat. He had dreams, he began, his voice trembling. He wanted to be a great architect, to build things that made people happy. But everything crumbled. He looked down, the pain still fresh. He had lost himself. And now here he was, trying to understand if he was capable of being something different. Rebecca looked at him with understanding. "We all make mistakes, William. The important thing is that you are trying to rise again. It's not easy, but you don't have to do it alone." Her words touched his heart, but doubt still lingered. What would she see in him? An ex-convict, a broken man. Could he really have a place in the world? Days turned to weeks, and William began to feel more comfortable in his new life. However, the whispers of the neighborhood were a constant reminder of his past. He heard the furtive conversations, the disapproving looks. What is he doing here? It's not safe to have a man like him around. These voices echoed in his mind, making him question whether he truly deserved the second chance he was trying to earn. One day, while tending to the garden of the house he now called home, he ran into an old childhood friend, Daniel. Daniel's face lit up when he saw him, but the joy quickly turned into hesitation. "William? Is that you? What happened?" The curiosity was clear, but there was tension in the air. William felt his stomach churn. He didn't want to relive the past, but he knew he couldn't run from it. "I made bad choices, Daniel. I'm trying to change, trying to be a better person," he replied, his voice firm, but insecurity shining through. Daniel frowned, clearly torn between concern and friendship. "I hope you're telling the truth. People don't forget easily." Those words cut William deeply. The doubt he tried to bury resurfaced with force. He looked at the baby in his arms, the little life that now depended on him. "What if I fail?" he questioned himself. "What if I can't be the father he needs?" Conversations with Rebecca became deeper, but also more complicated. She wanted to know more about his past, which made him hesitate to open up. And every time he closed himself off, she felt it was a step away from him. "William, you can't keep hiding. If we are to build something together, you need to let me in," she said one night, frustration evident in her voice. He looked into her eyes and saw sincerity, but also desperation. "I don't know if I can," he confessed. "The fear of losing again is paralyzing." Tears formed in his eyes and he felt vulnerable, as if he were shedding his armor. "What if I'm not good enough?" Rebecca moved closer, holding his hand. "Being good enough doesn't mean being perfect. It means trying and learning from mistakes. You're already doing that. You're here fighting for a new life. That's more than many can manage." Her words resonated within him. He wanted to believe, but the internal battle continued. Memories of the past and uncertainties about the future left him in a state of confusion. And yet, Rebecca's presence and the baby were lights in his darkness, reminders that even amidst chaos, there was something worth fighting for. William realized that the lessons he was learning were more than just about fatherhood or redemption. They were about facing his fears and allowing himself to be vulnerable. And amid all this, he began to understand that to overcome his history, he would need to confront the pain, shame, and uncertainty. But above all, he would need to allow himself to love again. And that perhaps was the greatest challenge of all. William's life began to unfold at a new pace, but the shadow of his past continued to loom. He struggled to be a good father, but the responsibility of caring for the baby made him feel constantly on the brink of an emotional collapse. Every little cry from the newborn quickened his heart, and he wondered if he could meet the needs of that vulnerable life. The nights were long and lonely. William often found himself staring at the ceiling, eyes fixed on the darkness, while the little creature in the crib cried. The memory of his own childhood, marked by joy and innocence, contrasted sharply with the reality he faced now, How did I get here? He wondered, struggling to understand the journey that had led him to this new and challenging life. Insecurities became a constant weight on his shoulders. William felt that each day was a battle, not only against the voices of the past, but also against the expectations he placed on himself. He wanted to be a present and loving father, but doubt settled in his mind like a black cloud. What if I don't know what to do? What if I fail him? He thought, as the baby slept peacefully, unaware of his anguish. Rebecca, the doctor who had become an anchor in his life, began to notice the changes in William. She watched him struggle to care for the baby, but also sensed the weight he carried. One morning, as he changed the little one's diaper, she approached and said, "William, you are stronger than you think. Allow yourself to feel, but don't let that stop you from acting. The love you have for him is the first step." Rebecca's words echoed in his mind, but William couldn't shake the feeling of inadequacy. He remembered his friend Daniel and the conversation they had in the garden. The pressure of societal expectations and the doubt that he might be getting involved in something he wasn't sure how to handle felt like chains holding him down. The idea of failing again was terrifying. As days passed, William began to realize that his internal struggle affected not just him, but also those around him. Rebecca, always so understanding, started to become frustrated with his resistance to open up. "William, I want to help, but you need to allow yourself to be vulnerable." "I'm not an enemy," she said, in a concerned tone. He felt paralyzed, as if he were in a prison he had built himself. Tension rose when a neighbor, worried about the baby's safety, decided to make an anonymous report. William received an unexpected visit from social workers who came to investigate the situation. His heart raced upon seeing them at the door, and a wave of panic washed over him. What will they think of me? What if they take the baby away? He wondered, a sense of helplessness overtaking him. During the visit, William tried to remain calm, but the social workers' questions made him even more anxious. He felt as if he were being scrutinized, each of his answers a desperate attempt to prove he was capable. Deep down, he knew he was still battling his own demons, and that made everything harder. What if they see that I'm not good enough? He thought, his inner voice tormenting him. After the visit, the pressure increased even more. William felt as if he were being watched with every move, and the idea that his failures could cost him custody of the baby kept him on high alert. He withdrew from Rebecca, fearing that his insecurity might push her away. The friendship that had once been a safe harbor now felt like a source of tension. Loneliness became a constant companion, and William found himself fighting his battle not only against the outside world, but also against the demons that resided in his mind. He spent hours reflecting on his choices and questioning whether he really had what it took to be a father. In a moment of despair, he decided to seek Daniel again, hoping that friendship could offer some clarity. When they met, William opened up about his insecurities and the fear of not being enough. Daniel listened to him in silence and then said, "William, we all face challenges. What matters is how you deal with them. You can choose to be driven by fear or use it as fuel to become the person you want to be." Daniel's words resonated within him, but there was still a part of William that hesitated to believe he could truly change. As the weeks went by, William began to realize that his past didn't have to define his future. He started to accept that the mistakes he had made were part of his journey, not a burden. However, he still felt the pressure of being the father the baby needed. With each small victory, like making the baby laugh or calming him during a crying spell, he felt a spark of hope. But these victories were often followed by moments of doubt, and he questioned whether he could sustain this new reality. Rebecca, noticing the struggle William was still facing, decided to be more direct. "William, you need to accept that life is full of uncertainties. There are no guarantees that you will never fail, but that doesn't mean you are unworthy of love or of being a father." Her words penetrated his heart like a balm, but they also ignited a new wave of fear. "What if I fail? What if I can't do it?" he thought, struggling to maintain faith in himself. As William navigated this sea of uncertainties, he began to realize that each day was a new opportunity. The lessons he was learning were about more than just fatherhood. They were about allowing himself to be human with all his flaws and imperfections. He began to understand that to truly love, he needed to allow himself to be vulnerable, even if it meant facing his own fears. And although the road ahead was filled with challenges, he knew that this was the only way to find the freedom he so desired. William was in a state of constant anxiety and vulnerability. His internal struggle intensified when, on a cold morning, while changing the baby, he noticed the little creature looking at him with a pure and innocent gaze. That look ignited something within him, but it also brought forth an overwhelming wave of fear. "What if I'm not worthy of that look?" he thought, the pressure in his chest increasing. The weight of his insecurities became unbearable, and he felt his heart race. The day went on, and the tension in his home grew. Every cry from the baby seemed like an echo of his own failures, and he found himself in a vicious cycle of doubt and frustration. When night fell, the darkness brought with it an even deeper sense of isolation. William sat on the bed, staring at the crib, and anguish turned into tears. He felt he was failing not only as a father, but also as a man. "How can I protect this life if I can't even protect myself?" he wondered, his mind spinning in turmoil. In a moment of desperation, William decided he needed help. He remembered Daniel, and despite his fear of opening up, knew he had no other option. When they met, Daniel quickly noticed that something was wrong. Hearing William's words, he felt the pain and fragility of his friend. "William, you're not alone in this. We all face tough times. What matters is how you react to them," Daniel said. But for William, that message felt distant. That day, as they talked, William was flooded with memories of his past. He remembered the promises he made to himself when he was at rock bottom, promises that he would never let himself be overwhelmed again. But now, looking at the little one in the crib, he felt he had disappointed not only himself but also this new life that depended on him. The weight of expectations, both from himself and society, seemed to crush him. The conversation with Daniel turned into an intense reflection. While the baby slept, William sat at the table and began to write. He put down on paper all his insecurities, his fears, and, most importantly, his desires to be a good father. As the words flowed, he felt a weight lifting. Writing became a form of liberation, a way to confront and perhaps understand his feelings. He realized that he didn't need to be perfect, he just needed to be authentic. The act of writing transformed into a ritual. William began to confront his past mistakes, reliving moments in his life that had marked him. He remembered the bad decisions, the people he hurt, and the opportunities he let slip away. The pain of those memories enveloped him like a fog, and he felt lost, as if he were in a maze with no exit. What if I never get out of this? What if I'm doomed to repeat the mistakes of the past? He thought, doubt gnawing at his hope. That very night, something changed within him. Each day, William dedicated time to reflect on his experiences, his failures, and his victories. He began to understand that true success wasn't about being a perfect father, but about being present and willing to learn. This new perspective began to shape his view of fatherhood and his own life. He realized that by allowing himself to fail, he was giving himself the necessary space to grow. Each mistake became a lesson, each tear an opportunity for renewal. The emotional impact of this discovery was profound. William began to feel lighter, as if an invisible burden was being lifted from his shoulders. He started to see the baby not just as a responsibility, but as an opportunity to rewrite his story. If I can make a positive difference in his life, maybe I can also find my own redemption, he thought, this idea becoming a mantra in his mind. In the days that followed, William began to open up more to Rebecca and Daniel, sharing his vulnerabilities and doubts. He realized that he didn't have to fight this battle alone. By allowing himself to be vulnerable, he also allowed friends and family to enter his life in a more meaningful way. This connection brought a new level of support and understanding, and over time, he felt strengthened by these relationships. When a new challenge arose, an unexpected visit from social workers, William felt the fear surface again, but this time he was more prepared. Instead of letting anxiety paralyze him, he took a deep breath and decided to face the situation with honesty. As he answered the questions, he remembered the lessons he had learned. He was willing to show his true self with all his imperfections. The meeting was intense, but William felt surprisingly at peace. He realized he was being evaluated not just for his ability to care for the baby, but also for his willingness to grow and learn. That experience, which had once seemed like a threat, turned into an opportunity to reveal the truth about who he was and who he wished to become. As time passed, William began to see life differently. He understood that each day was a new chance to be better, to be the father the baby deserved. He learned that vulnerability was not a sign of weakness, but rather a powerful strength that connected him to others. The confidence he had lost gradually began to return, and with it, a renewed sense of purpose. Thus, William's journey not only transformed him into a father, but also into a more complete man. He was willing to confront his demons, learn from his mistakes, and embrace life with all its uncertainties. With each step forward, he felt he was getting closer not only to his child, but also to himself. And ultimately, that was what really mattered. William was in a state of constant anxiety and vulnerability. His internal struggle intensified when, on a cold morning, while changing the baby, he noticed that the little creature was looking at him with a pure and innocent gaze. That look ignited something inside him, but it also brought forth an overwhelming wave of fear. What if I am not worthy of that look? He thought, the pressure in his chest increasing. The weight of his insecurities became unbearable, and he felt his heart race. The day went on, and the tension in his home grew. Every cry from the baby seemed like an echo of his own failures, and he found himself in a vicious cycle of doubt and frustration. When night fell, the darkness brought with it an even deeper sense of isolation. William sat on the bed, looking at the crib, and anguish turned into tears. He felt he was failing not just as a father, but also as a man. How can I protect this life if I can't even protect myself? He questioned, his mind spinning in a whirlwind. In a moment of desperation, William decided he needed help. He remembered Daniel, and despite his fear of opening up, knew he had no other option. When they met, Daniel quickly sensed that something was wrong. Upon hearing William's words, he felt the pain and fragility of his friend. "William, you are not alone in this. We all face tough moments. What matters is how you respond to them," Daniel said. But to William, this message felt distant. That day, as they talked, William was flooded with memories of his past. He remembered the promises he made to himself when he was at rock bottom, the promises that he would never let himself be overwhelmed again. But now, looking at the little one in the crib, he felt he had disappointed not just himself, but also this new life that depended on him. The weight of expectations, both from himself and society, seemed to crush him. The conversation with Daniel turned into an intense reflection. William began to confront his past mistakes, reliving moments in his life that had marked him. He recalled the poor decisions, the people he hurt, and the opportunities he let slip away. The pain of those memories enveloped him like a fog, and he felt lost, as if he were in a maze with no exit. What if I never get out of this? What if I am doomed to repeat the mistakes of the past? He thought, doubt eating away at his hope. That very night, something changed within him. While the baby slept, William sat at the table and began to write. He put on paper all his insecurities, his fears, and, above all, his desires to be a good father. As the words flowed, he felt a weight lifting. Writing became a form of liberation, a way to confront and perhaps understand his feelings. He realized he didn't need to be perfect. He just needed to be authentic. The act of writing turned into a ritual. Each day, William dedicated time to reflect on his experiences, his failures, and his victories. He began to understand that true success was not in being a perfect father, but in being present and willing to learn. This new perspective began to shape his view of fatherhood and his own life. He realized that by allowing himself to make mistakes, he was giving himself the necessary space to grow. Each mistake became a lesson, each tear an opportunity for renewal. The emotional impact of this discovery was profound. William began to feel lighter, as if an invisible burden was being lifted from his shoulders. He started to see the baby not just as a responsibility, but as an opportunity to rewrite his story. If I can make a positive difference in his life, maybe I can also find my own redemption, he thought, this idea becoming a mantra in his mind. In the days that followed, William began to open up more to Rebecca and Daniel, sharing his vulnerabilities and doubts. He realized that he did not have to fight this battle alone. By allowing himself to be vulnerable, he also allowed friends and family to enter his life in a more meaningful way. This connection brought a new level of support and understanding, and over time, he felt strengthened by these relationships. When a new challenge arose, an unexpected visit from social workers, William felt fear resurface. But this time, he was more prepared. Instead of letting anxiety paralyze him, he took a deep breath and decided to face the situation with honesty. As he answered the questions, he remembered the lessons he had learned. He was willing to show his true self, with all his imperfections. The meeting was intense, but William felt surprisingly at peace. He realized he was being evaluated not only on his ability to care for the baby, but also on his willingness to grow and learn. That experience, which had once seemed like a threat, turned into an opportunity to show the truth about who he was and who he wanted to become. Over time, William began to see life differently. He understood that each day was a new chance to be better, to be the father the baby deserved. He learned that vulnerability was not a sign of weakness, but rather a powerful strength that connected him to others. The confidence he had lost gradually began to return, and with it, a renewed sense of purpose. However, the journey of self-discovery was not linear. There were days when doubt returned, like a persistent shadow. On one of those days, as William looked at the baby, he was overtaken by a new wave of insecurity. "What if all of this isn't enough?" he murmured to himself as his heart tightened. He remembered moments when he felt inadequate and began to question whether he was really changing. Rebecca, noticing the change in his behavior, approached him. "William, are you okay?" she asked with concern. He hesitated, feeling the weight of the words in his throat. I'm just thinking about how I can be the best for him," he replied, his voice trembling. "You are already being the best, just by being here and caring." "You don't have to be perfect," Rebecca said softly. Her words were like a balm, but the doubt still lingered in his mind. William felt grateful, but the internal struggle was intense. He began to realize that this new phase of life also required facing the ghosts of the past, the promises made to himself, and the expectations he had. Conversations with Daniel became more frequent. They met regularly, and William began to open his heart about his insecurities. "Sometimes I feel like I'm just waiting to fail again," he confessed in one of those meetings. Daniel looked him in the eyes with a deep, understanding expression. "We all have that fear, William. The important thing is not to let it control you. You are doing the best you can, and that is what matters." These words echoed in William's mind, but the internal struggle continued. He began to realize that true overcoming was not just about feeling good, but about accepting that life was full of ups and downs and that each step forward was an achievement. He started writing about it, reflecting on the meaning of resilience and how failures were part of the process, not the end of it. The changes in William also began to affect Rebecca and Daniel. Rebecca felt closer to him, seeing him open up and become more aware of his emotions. Daniel, in turn, felt inspired by William's determination to face his fears. Their friendship strengthened, and they began to support each other in ways they had never done before. William's relationship with the baby also evolved. He began to realize that fatherhood was not about being perfect, but about being present. Each laugh, each moment of affection became a new opportunity for connection. He started playing more, telling stories, and even dancing with the baby in his arms. These little moments brought a new light to his life and helped dissipate the clouds of doubt. Over time, William realized that the journey of overcoming was ongoing. He still faced challenges and doubts, but now he had tools to deal with them. Writing, conversations with friends, and accepting his vulnerability made him stronger. He learned that even when life seemed difficult, there was always a light on the horizon, and that each new day brought with it the chance to start over. William's life was changing, and with it, the relationships around him. He felt that he was becoming a more authentic version of himself, someone who was willing to face challenges and embrace imperfections. And deep down, he knew that this was the true essence of fatherhood: to love unconditionally, even when doubt and fear tried to take control. William sat at the table with a notebook in hand, the pen trembling slightly between his fingers. He looked at the blank pages and felt a lump form in his throat. This was his space, a refuge where he could pour out his insecurities and fears. He began to write about the baby's gaze, that pure and innocent look that challenged him to be better. "How can I be worthy of this?" he silently questioned as the words began to flow. With each sentence he wrote, William felt a little of the weight in his chest dissipate. He wrote about his failures as if he were bearing his soul. "I made so many mistakes before," he started. "But now I have a new chance. I can't keep holding on to who I was." He paused and took a deep breath, feeling the need to believe he could change. Gradually, the idea that his failures were part of the process began to take root. He looked out the window and saw the sun setting, warm colors illuminating the sky. It was a sign that each day is a new opportunity. That night, while the babies slept peacefully in the crib, William decided he would talk to Daniel again. They met at a local cafe, a cozy place where the aroma of fresh coffee lingered in the air. As he sat at the table, William felt a flutter in his stomach, but he was determined to open his heart. "Daniel, I've been feeling so lost. Sometimes I feel like I'm not capable of being the father the baby deserves," he confessed, his voice trembling. Daniel looked at him with compassion. "William, we all go through moments like this, but the fact that you are here, caring and trying, is already a great demonstration of love. Don't forget that being a father is a constant learning process," he replied, his words resonating in William like an echo of hope. They talked for hours, and with each exchange, William began to realize that he was not alone in his struggles. In the following days, William made a conscious effort to connect more with the baby. He started setting aside specific time to play, sing, and tell stories. In one of those moments, while rocking the baby in his arms, he remembered the joy that came with the simplicity of small things. "Look at you," he whispered. "You are everything I've ever wanted." And as he said this, a new determination blossomed within him. He understood that fatherhood was not about being perfect, but about being present. Rebecca began to notice the change in William. One night, while he was changing the baby, she approached and asked, "Do you feel more secure now?" He hesitated, but instead of shutting down, he decided to be honest. "I still have my fears, but I'm trying to see things differently. I'm learning to accept that I can make mistakes, and that it's part of the process." Rebecca smiled, and her words encouraged him even more. "That's how you grow, William. I'm proud of you." With each conversation, with each interaction, William felt he was building a new foundation for his life. He began to understand that true wealth was not in material achievements, but in the relationships and the love he shared with those around him. His friendship with Daniel solidified, and they began to meet more often. They became mutual support, exchanging experiences and learning from each other. One morning, William decided it was time to face one of his biggest fears, the visit from social workers. He was nervous, but looking at the baby, he felt a wave of courage. "You deserve the best of me," he thought. When the workers arrived, he took a deep breath and remembered the conversations he had with Daniel. He was ready to show who he really was, with all his imperfections. During the visit, he spoke sincerely, sharing his struggles and the steps he was taking to be a better father. And to his surprise, he was met with understanding. After that experience, William felt as if a huge weight had been lifted off his shoulders. He learned that vulnerability was not a sign of weakness, but an open door to connection. By allowing himself to be seen, he also allowed others to enter his life in a meaningful way. And so, his journey of overcoming continued day by day. Over time, William began to apply the lessons he had learned. He decided that he would not only open up about his insecurities, but also seek support whenever necessary. With each new challenge, he remembered that growth was not linear, and that it was normal to have difficult days. He began to see his fears as allies rather than enemies. In a conversation with Daniel, he said, I used to think that fear was an obstacle. Now I see it as a sign that I'm about to grow." The friendship he cultivated with Daniel and Rebecca helped him see the world from a new perspective. He realized that everyone had their own battles and that together they could face any storm. The conversations became deeper and more meaningful, and as he shared his stories, William felt empowered, part of something greater. He discovered that true overcoming was a shared path, where mutual support was key to growth. And so with each small step taken, William began to feel more at peace with himself. He accepted that life is a journey full of ups and downs, and that by embracing his imperfections, he was getting closer to the most authentic version of himself. The love he felt for the baby became a source of motivation, and as he looked at that smiling face, he knew he was on the right path, not just as a father, but as a man. William was at a turning point. The visit from the social workers had left a profound mark on his mind, and he knew he needed to prepare for the next step. Fear and insecurity threatened to return, but he was determined not to let that happen. He looked at the baby who was in his lap and felt a love that drove him to be better. "I'm going to do this for you," he murmured as he caressed the small, round face. The next morning, he met Daniel at the cafe. It was a rainy morning, and the atmosphere seemed to reflect the turmoil in his mind. They had coffee, but William couldn't focus. His heart was racing, and the words he wanted to say seemed stuck in his throat. Finally, after a long pause, he said, "Daniel, what happens if I fail again? What if all of this is in vain?" Daniel looked into William's eyes, seeing the vulnerability in his expression. "William, failure is part of the process. No one is perfect. What matters is what you do afterward. Every day is a new chance to do things differently." Daniel's words touched him deeply, but doubt still consumed him. What if he couldn't do it? What if the life he was trying to build crumbled again? The conversation left him uneasy, and William decided he needed to face his fears once and for all. He left the cafe with a new sense of urgency. That day would be different. He returned home, and as he looked at the sleeping baby, he felt a wave of love and responsibility. "I can't fail you," he thought, and determination began to rise within him. As the hours passed, William prepared for the next evaluation by the social workers. He felt his heart tighten as he reviewed his notes, recalling the failures and promises he had made to himself. Feelings of inadequacy began to resurface, and he found himself thinking of the many times he had disappointed those around him. Doubt whispered in his mind, "What if they don't see the change? What if you're just the same as before?" The night before the visit, he had a dream. In the dream, he was in a dark room, surrounded by shadows that represented his fears and past mistakes. They surrounded him, whispering words of discouragement, telling him he would never be a good father, never be enough. But in the midst of the darkness, there was a light, the gaze of the baby. That light called to him, and as he approached it, he felt a strength that propelled him to face the shadows. In the dream, he shouted, "I am more than my mistakes. I am a father." Upon waking, the feeling of determination was palpable. He knew he needed to bring that energy into reality. The social worker's visit was his chance to show everyone that he had changed. The day finally arrived, and William was nervous, but at the same time, a new confidence was growing within him. He dressed carefully, looked in the mirror, and told himself, "Today, I will show who I am." When the social workers arrived, William greeted them with a nervous but genuine smile. He guided them through the house, showing not only the environment, but also the new dynamic he had created with the baby. During the conversation, he shared his struggles and the steps he had taken to become a better father. He spoke about the nights he felt lost, but also about the achievements he had made, no matter how small. However, as the conversation progressed, he felt the pressure mounting. One of the workers, with a critical look, asked, "What if you fail again? What will you do?" William's heart raced. He felt himself being pulled into the abyss of doubt again. But at that moment, he remembered the baby's gaze, the light that guided him. He took a deep breath and responded honestly, "If I fail, I will get up and try again. I can't give up. I can't let fear define who I am." The words came out of his mouth like a cry of liberation. He was facing his demons, not just for others, but for himself. The moment became intense, and he felt tears forming in his eyes. It was the first time he saw himself not just as a potential father, but as someone who was worthy of love, worthy of a second chance. The social worker, noticing William's sincerity, softened her gaze. "That's an important step, William. The recognition that you can fail but still choose to move forward is what truly matters." The tension in the room began to ease, and William felt immense relief. For the first time, he viewed the situation not as a test, but as an opportunity for growth. After the visit, as the workers left, William felt a weight being lifted from his shoulders. He knew there was still a long way to go, but he was ready to face it. He looked at the baby in his arms and smiled. "You taught me to be strong," he said, as tears streamed down his face. The journey wouldn't be easy, but now he knew he wasn't alone. He had love, friends, and the determination to create a better future, not only for himself, but for the little one who depended on him. William realized that true wealth lay in the connections he had made, and that success was not a finish line, but a journey of continuous growth and learning. He had faced his fears, and in doing so, discovered the strength that had always been within him. And as he looked to the future, he finally felt ready to embrace life as a father and as a man. After the social worker's visit, William's life began to change in subtle but profound ways. He had not only faced his fears, but also started to understand what it meant to be a truly present father. Looking at the baby in his arms, he felt a wave of hope. The little one, who once seemed like just a responsibility, was now a symbol of his new purpose. In the days that followed, William dedicated himself to building a routine that reflected his commitment. He woke up early, made breakfast, changed diapers, and sang songs to the baby. Each small task, once seen as a burden, had now become a source of joy. He realized that by caring for his child, he was also caring for himself. The connection forming between them was deep, and each smile from the baby brightened his day. His friendship with Daniel also grew stronger. Daniel became a pillar of support for William, always available to listen to his concerns and celebrate his small victories. They started to meet more often, not just for coffee but also for walks in the park. During these outings, William shared his reflections. "You know, Daniel, when I look at my son, I feel like I'm starting to see myself in a different way. It's as if I've been given a second chance in my own life." Daniel smiled, encouraging him to continue. "And you deserve that chance, William. We all have our struggles. What matters is how you rise up and transform from them." These conversations helped William understand that the path to overcoming was full of ups and downs, but that each step took him to a better place. His interactions with social workers, though challenging, also became more constructive. During his next visit, William felt more confident. He shared how he had implemented changes in his life and how he was learning to deal with his emotions. The workers noticed the difference in his behavior and the sincerity in his words. This was not just an evaluation, it was the recognition of a man who was transforming. William also began to connect with other parents in his community. He joined a local support group where men and women shared their parenting experiences. These meetings brought new perspectives and the feeling that he was not alone on this journey. He heard stories from people who had also faced difficulties and who were striving to be better. This inspired him even more to keep pushing himself. Meanwhile, William's relationships with his family also began to improve. He started to open up more to his mother, who had always worried about him. During one conversation, she praised him for his efforts. "William, I always knew you had incredible potential. Seeing you dedicate yourself to your son makes me believe that you are capable of anything." These words touched his heart and reinforced his determination. Time passed, and William's life became more balanced. He understood that true success was not in avoiding failures, but in learning from them. He began to see his past experiences as stepping stones that led him to a place of greater understanding and empathy. The love he felt for the baby motivated him to be a better version of himself, and he was more willing to accept help when needed. William realized that life was full of complexities, but now he faced them with a more open mind. He learned to be kind to himself, understanding that failures were part of growth. Looking to the future, he felt prepared to face any challenge that arose. In the end, the lessons William learned along the way became clear. He had not only overcome his limitations, but also cultivated a new mindset, one that accepted both successes and failures. He knew that each day was a new opportunity and that parenting was a constant learning experience. As he looked at the baby, now laughing and playing, William smiled. He felt grateful for every step that had brought him to this point. He knew that the journey was just beginning, but he was ready to embrace all that life had to offer. He had love, friends, and above all, the courage to be who he truly was. And that, to him, was the true meaning of success. William sat on the backyard swing, watching the sun slowly set on the horizon. The baby, now 1 year old, was playing with some toys scattered on the grass. He felt a wave of gratitude as he looked at his son, remembering how his life had changed in the past few months. The journey he had taken had not been easy, but reflecting on everything he had been through, he realized that each challenge helped him become the person he was now. Over time, William learned to look at his failures not as barriers, but as opportunities for learning. He remembered difficult moments, like sleepless nights or the doubts that tormented him about his ability to be a good father. However, those moments turned into lessons that shaped his new perspective on life. Now he saw the world with a more open mind, understanding that life is full of ups and downs and that every experience, good or bad, contributed to his personal growth. His friendship with Daniel had become a fundamental part of his new life. They shared not only laughter but also challenges and achievements. William recalled how Daniel encouraged him to seek help and to open up about his feelings. This unusual friendship, which had begun casually, was now a pillar of strength. William realized that having someone to rely on made all the difference, and this connection helped him face his insecurities. The relationship with his family also strengthened. He often talked to his mother, who now supported him unconditionally. William reflected on how open communication brought relief and understanding, allowing him to feel more connected. This change made him want to be present in all aspects of his son's life, not just as a father, but as an example of overcoming and love. The support group for parents became a safe space for William, where he could share his experiences and learn from others. He remembered how each story told there inspired him to keep striving. He realized he was not alone on his journey. Many faced similar challenges, and together they formed a network of support and encouragement. This collective experience brought new perspectives and helped him understand that parenting was a shared journey. Over time, William began to engage more in the community, participating in local events and helping with initiatives to support parents in vulnerable situations. He felt fulfilled sharing what he had learned, hoping to inspire others to find their own strengths. The idea that his journey could help someone motivated him even more. He realized that by helping others, he was also helping himself. Now, looking toward the future, William felt more prepared than ever. He understood that true success was not measured by material possessions or superficial achievements, but by the relationships he cultivated and the love he shared. The wealth he now valued was the connection with his son, the friendship with Daniel, and the support he offered to his community. He had learned that being a present father was what truly mattered. William reflected on the wisdom he had gained throughout his journey. He learned to be kind to himself, to accept that life is a series of new beginnings, and that each failure brings with it a valuable lesson. He realized that true peace comes from accepting his imperfections and being willing to learn and grow. This new perspective helped him live in harmony with his emotions and the world around him. He looked at the baby, now laughing and exploring the backyard, and smiled. The love he felt for his son was what kept him motivated. William knew that each day was a new opportunity to be a better father and, at the same time, a better man. He was at peace with the past and eager for the future. The journey that had begun full of uncertainties was now illuminated by hope and determination. William had become the best version of himself, and this was just the beginning. He was ready to face any challenge that came his way, always remembering that life is a continuous learning experience. And so, with his heart full of love and his mind full of wisdom, he prepared to embrace all that life still had to offer. William watched his son explore the backyard, his eyes shining with curiosity and joy. His heart swelled with love, and he thought about how much his life had changed. Every challenge he had faced, every doubt he had overcome, now contributed to the person he was. He had learned to see his failures as stepping stones to success, not as insurmountable walls. The weight he had once carried on his shoulders now felt light, as if every step he had taken had prepared him for this moment. As the sun bid farewell on the horizon, he reflected on the difficult days and sleepless nights. There was a time when he felt lost, unsure if he would be the father his son needed. But looking at the boy, he knew he had made progress. The journey had not been easy, but he had found strength in unexpected places. Daniel's support, the friendship that had blossomed between them, had been a turning point. Deep conversations and shared laughter helped William open his heart, showing him that vulnerability was not a sign of weakness, but a demonstration of courage. Daniel had once said, while they were having coffee, that he was doing very well. Being a father is a constant learning process, and you're learning every day. Those words echoed in William's mind, a constant reminder that he was not alone. The connection he had formed with other fathers in the support group also brought a sense of belonging. The stories he heard there, so diverse yet so similar, showed him that everyone was fighting their own battles. His relationship with his mother had also evolved. Conversations that had once been superficial were now deep and sincere. William remembered a day when, after a candid conversation, his mother had told him, "You're doing a great job, son. It's normal to have doubts, but don't forget that love is what matters." These words became a mantra for him, guiding him on his journey. He also began to get involved in his community, helping other fathers and seeking ways to make a difference. Every small gesture, every word of encouragement he offered, not only helped others, but also strengthened him. The idea that his story could be a light for someone in dark times inspired him. He understood that true wealth did not come from material possessions, but from the connections and love cultivated throughout life. As William lost himself in his thoughts, a loud, joyful laugh from his son brought him back to reality. The little one was now playing with a bucket, making more noise than necessary, but that only made the father smile. Every laugh, every discovery was a reminder that fatherhood was a journey of love and learning. He was ready to face the challenges yet to come, with the certainty that no matter what happened, there would always be room for new beginnings. But suddenly a scream pierced the air. William looked quickly startled. The baby had wandered a little further than usual and was now standing in front of a small dog that had appeared out of nowhere. The animal, with its scruffy fur and curious eyes, stopped in front of the boy, as if also intrigued by the new friendship forming. William ran to them, his heart racing, but upon seeing the scene, he couldn't contain a smile. The dog, with its playful demeanor, seemed to have decided it would become part of the family. "Hey, little one, what are you doing here?" William crouched down, looking into the dog's eyes. He didn't know where the animal had come from, but he felt that this unexpected arrival was a sign. Just as he had found strength in difficult moments, now a new chapter was beginning. The presence of the dog symbolized not only joy, but the continuity of life and the surprises it brought. "Let's take you home, buddy," William said, petting the little dog's head. The baby, delighted with the new companion, let out a contagious laugh that echoed through the backyard. The scene was magical, a father, a son, and a new friend, united by joy and discovery. In that moment, William realized that life was full of twists and turns, and that the true beauty lay in how he chose to respond to them. He smiled, not just at the dog or his son, but at life. Each day would bring its own story, and he was ready to write it with love and courage. As the sun finally set, William felt a wave of gratitude. He had learned that life was not just about individual achievements, but about the connections we form with others. And so, with a full heart, he invited everyone to reflect on their own journeys, to share their stories, and to come together in the search for a kinder and more loving world. Life is a gift, and each of us has the power to make it special.